Alright, response video to Carla. Stella, or whatever. Whatever, doesn't matter. This is so depressing. Yeah, really, oh God, I can't bear another day on this planet. Yeah. Anyway, it seems to be getting more difficult with time. Anyway. I'm just complaining. Okay, alright, I'll get to work. Let's play some of this garbage.
First argument I would make to you is that if there was some intelligence in the universe, some mechanism, it would have to come from somewhere. There would have to be some creator of it.
Oh, we have to read it. Oh, shit. Anyway, no, it simply always existed. I mean, I love that. Yeah, so complex things always have to exist, and somehow on Earth, when they create something, they have to do it in some 4 billion year process. And then they have to flush it down the toilet a couple of times, right? The intelligence that always existed can't seem to get it right, and so it has to flush its creation down the toilet a few times before it, figures it out. Why is that so inconceivable? Because everything we know about how the material universe works is that it just doesn't poof out of somewhere. That's right, it's built out of something. And it's built by a function. Like there has to be a mechanism that creates the causes it. So in the mechanism of evolution is this whole survival game. So we understand why intelligence was selected for, having reflexes that were more nuanced would be selected for. That makes some sort of rational sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever for the non-universe place to just poof intelligence out of nowhere and do it only once. Yeah, why isn't there a whole bunch of intelligences, and why aren't they doing something like, they're not going to even play with their creation. They create something and then they don't even play with it. So they make a toy and they don't even use it. They just throw it in the toolbox, throw it in the toy box, and then when it makes a little bit of noise they throw it in the toilet and drown most of it. You also assume that the universe or whatever came before the Big Bang always existed. Or whatever before the Big Bang always existed. You also assume that the universe or whatever came before the Big Bang, comma, that's what should be there, always existed. No. Maybe. No, maybe. Doesn't matter. What we know is it's damn crude. That's what we know. We know that the forces don't get more complicated and then generate simplicity. No, they're uncomplicated as you go back. They're less complicated. There's less structure, and then there becomes more structure through interaction of the parts. Yeah. Big Bang. How is that supposed to work? Oh, a little satirical question. Again, you want some answer for before the Big Bang. I don't have that answer. You can just speculate that obviously, because it exists, there's some phenomenon that takes place in universes or whatever, in forever and ever, in whatever and ever, that creates tons of quanta in a condition where it expands into a big poof, a big puffy blobby blob of quanta, and that it all ends up apparently trying to re-glue itself together. Yeah, and then maybe it just keeps doing that forever. Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. Assuming determinism, there is either a chain of cause and effects that stretches infinitely long into the past, or the chain stops somewhere. Yes, that's true. Yeah. I don't know. You know what you know. You can sit there and say, okay, you have an assembly line that produces something, Twinkies, and then it produces 1,678,000 Twinkies in a row just fine, and then all of a sudden the ho-ho pops out, because of some error in the, when the cog wheels turn enough times, the little chip on one wheel hits the little chip on another wheel, hits the little chip on another wheel, and something goes wrong. So maybe that's all that the universe is displaying, is the fact that it makes zillions, it just keeps paving the nothing with nothing. And every now and then something goes wrong and a mistake, boom, and something goes wrong and a flaw happens, and then the flaw explodes, and it retracts back into the fabric again, and maybe it doesn't happen for another zillion, bazillion, 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 bazillion deca mega miles of asphalt. Who knows? I mean, it's just silly. We know where we came from. We know what we are. We're biological organisms that evolved on planet Earth. You want to believe in a fairy tale of human creation, go ahead, but it's a fairy tale. Cause and effect somewhat at some initial cause. Yeah, well, again, the initial cause could be a repeating cause, so that just doesn't, I mean, you can have something like, you can have a phenomenon that contracts and expands and contracts and expands and contracts and expands, like a spring. And so it could be made like a spring, and it just keeps springing. It's a possibility. But I'd say this probably is some sort of, initial cause is kind of complicated, but there's a function of the universe, and in the function, there's a piece of dust, and the piece of dust realizes its reality in the sense that it causes eventually error, and we're the definition of error. But then you can always ask, where did the initial cause come from? Is the rocks on Mars asking the question? I don't know. Is the gas on Saturn asking the question? It's not a relevant question. I mean, most we know what we are, and we know how. We know the fact that you don't just make one of these human-y things; that it's a long chain to develop one, and that even the initial cell, from which all our common genetics comes from, is not some easy, simple chemistry. So it's obviously not the function of the universe to create this stuff. So, but I mean, initial causes, again, even if there is an initial cause, I don't have to explain the initial cause to propose a perfectly rational theory that the initial cause isn't something with an agenda. Yeah, the agenda to what? Torture sentient creatures for 500 million years? No, come on. Silly. So we'll move along here. It doesn't give much time for reading.
The idea of a forever intelligence just doesn't make any sense. It always was, and then one day it decided to start life on Earth.
Okay, let's see what we get here. God didn't just decide one day, okay, I'm glad you know this from something, to start life on Earth. Well, so you're saying that God thinks outside of any kind of linearity, that this super being creator thing doesn't have a chain of thoughts and a chain of their own evolution in terms of their understanding. He doesn't contemplate one thing and then contemplate another thing, and then there's no word association in the intelligence. There's no coherency in terms of establishing an agenda for itself, a life for itself. It doesn't strive. It doesn't desire. It doesn't do any of the things it, created man in its own image, didn't it? Well, then it doesn't. But it's that its own image doesn't mean it has anything whatsoever to do with how humans function. So God doesn't function any way like a human, and yet He created His creation in His own image. So I guess you just figure that part's the lie, right? There's some lies in the Bible, they're mistruths or something, and so that part doesn't fit your little gaudy thing. I mean, she is using this Christian God. Anyway, it's a time measure that doesn't even make sense before the earth existed. But there has to be a measure. And whether you call it time or not, I don't care. But there's just nothing coherent to any intelligent device, any software program, anything. Has to run in an order, a sequence of processes. And if it doesn't have a sequence of processes, it's not going to have any coherency. So to say that God had no agenda the day before He created life on earth is almost to say that His thoughts were spontaneously generated without first causes. So here you're requiring me to come up with first causes, and yet you don't have to have a first cause for intelligence. You don't have to have a first cause for a thought. Thoughts just spontaneously popped into God's head. Come on. God created the universe and therefore space-time itself. Well, whatever. I don't think you know shit about any kind of space-time. There's any such thing as space-time anyway. It's just bullshit. Space-time is part of the fabric of the universe itself. It's not really space-time. It just has to do with distance and time, the speed of light. It doesn't exist before the universe existed. So, again, that your God exists outside of... So it's not only that He would create the material in the universe, He created the linearity of the function of matter. And there was no linearity to God's existence. He didn't move from this point to this point in a progression. There was no chain of cause and effect in God's brain. Okay, I don't buy that. I think it's silly nonsense. There was no before the Big Bang. Creation could not happen as an ordinary event in space-time. Well, apparently it could, because somehow God made it happen, your superpower entity. But it doesn't really matter, because the thoughts in His own head were being created by some supernatural entity. So God is inspired by the supernatural to be supernatural, to make something natural. And that's supposed to make sense to me. Why would these supernatural things make something so mundane as natural? You can't just conceive of it as a mechanical event. I'm not conceiving it as mechanical. I'm just saying it has to obey some rules of logic and thought, and those are just they're just our kind of rules and agenda. These things can't come out of nowhere. They have to come out of something. And you have to manifest a thing called it. Humans do things because they desire. You're saying God doesn't do them because He desires. He's just some sort of machine that doesn't desire. And even if He did desire, it didn't come from some sort of process, some chain of event process of a thought, of a brain, of a development of an idea. And I still don't think you've escaped the idea that in the fact of eternity, if you're going to say your God existed forever and ever, you'd still have to explain why now is when creation happened. It's a little bit complicated, isn't it? I mean, what was He doing forever and ever? You're saying forever and ever exists, right? You're obliging me to tell you about a universe where forever and ever exists, and you're saying, no, in God's world there is no forever and ever. I mean, it doesn't mean anything because nothing happens, you're saying. Well, why can't I say, well, that's how the real universe works. Nothing happens forever and ever, and then all of a sudden there's an error and something happens. But I'm claiming an error in the crudest of process. You're claiming an error, an aberration of inspiration, a godly inspiration happened all of a sudden, 4 billion years ago. Or whatever the idiotic notion of God's 7-day fun time party was. Oh, there we got something new, I think. Alright, you have to conceive of it non-mechanically. That doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, so I'm supposed to conceive of ideas held in a non-ordered, non-functioning even. There's no function. There's There's no mechanism for connecting things or ordering things. There's no neural network of any kind or description. There's absolutely no, it's not the byproduct of some sort of cause and effect, mechanical interaction that produces God's inspiration. The universe somehow knows it. Oh yeah, I gotta create a super unnatural superpower being to create a natural world so life can evolve on Earth for 4 billion years. That's the agenda of the super brilliant mechanical forces of the universe. I mean, they don't decide to go fishing or something. They decide to go create Earth. And then flush it down the toilet a few times. Okay. Anyway, beyond simple cause and effect mechanism, beyond time, beyond space, beyond logic, beyond sensibility, beyond any reasonable excuse for a thinking device. Just completely throw your brain on the ground and kick it into the curb. Like duty. I mean, why do this to yourself? Why sit there and pretend your inspiration for creation comes from absolutely nowhere? God also doesn't exist in ordinary sense before the Big Bang, so he's only his finger existed, and he poked his finger into the universe and wiggled it just right, and the universe went, ah, it is good. Oh, fuck. In the ordinary sense before the big orgasm. Ah, that's how he did it. He stuck his finger in, wiggled it twice, the universe orgasmed, and voila! Here we are, spasmed all over the place. I.e., he doesn't exist in a material object, as a material object. Well, again, it's not. I'm not requiring him to be material. I'm just requiring him to obey the simple function of how intelligence processes, how anything that's going to act, okay, anything that's going to be an actor has to sort of have some sort of agenda, and the agenda has to be made out of some sort of process. You know, to say that it's a non-processed agenda, it just poofs the agenda. It just poofs out of nothing. I mean, you're not even giving me a God that created God's agenda. From that, it cannot be concluded that he doesn't exist at all, though. Because he, yeah, I guess maybe you're not a chick. Because then, by the same logic, whatever caused the Big Bang could not have existed either. Alright, yeah, well, you're the one presupposing a complexity. I'm presupposing a simplicity. So, I think one is still closer to answering the question than the other. I mean, poofing a God, poofing it all, doesn't answer the question. But clearly, I don't think we're ever going to be able to take any kind of magnifying glass and look at the day before the Big Bang. That's going to be really difficult to do. All the fingerprints and footprints and stuff are all erased through the gigantic heat process. But you know, maybe somebody will come up with some sort of speculation that'll satisfy you. But yeah, it's, you know, I mean, there's nothing I can do with that question. I mean, I can't. But I mean, I think I can do a lot with the question about whether or not we are something other than a life form that evolved on planet Earth. And I don't think you can escape that fact. And that in intelligence, there's no conceivable line of intelligent contemplation that could possibly come up with the idea that it's a good idea to create sentient beings and then torture them. That's just silly. It is clear that at least something must have existed before the Big Bang, right? Okay. So from that we can conclude that either different from of existence form of it must must be possible, or the universe simply popped into existence out of nothing. Well, I mean, the levels of nothing are the tricky part. But let's just say the universe creates one quanta per explosion, and that's the recycling thing, and it just keeps creating one quanta per Big Bang. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can just explain it, what it's doing. But what I'm going to say, I suppose, is that I think it is just error, and I think it is resolvable. It's like a pimple; it'll pop, and then it'll go away. But that is even more inconceivable. Well, conceivability. Well, like I said, I don't think it's inconceivable to imagine a crude process and then understanding how the universe throws a bunch of little pieces of little sticky things, little sticky, styrofoam balls, and you throw them into the air, and they bounce all around in a machine that has wind blowing, and they start sticking to each other. I don't think that's inconceivable. Yeah, I don't. Although some physicists conclude from quantum mechanics that particles can spontaneously come into existence. Well, I don't think they're really good physicists. They don't come into existence from nothing at all either, since the laws of quantum mechanics still... Oh, here we go. I mean, that sounds like a contradiction. They spontaneously come into existence. They don't come into existence from nothing at all. I don't know. I mean, yeah. Spontaneous? Yeah, I don't think so. Still, oh, okay. Quantum mechanics still has to be presupposed, I think. Since the laws of quantum mechanics still have to be presupposed. They're not really laws, I mean, quantum mechanics doesn't really establish laws. It's a mathematics that seems to sufficiently describe how the physical structure works in terms of how it has the particles have a character, and that character creates a probability of outcomes. The character of matter produces the probability. The probability doesn't produce the character of the matter. So I don't think you understand quantum mechanics either. Hey, that's me.
It decided to do that. And through what kind of process of evolution did it go through to get to that conclusion?
Alright, so God created us, and so here we go. Presumably it did not require to go through any process of evolution, so it just was spontaneously knowledgeable, the universe creator, and the universe creator it didn't have to think about it, it didn't have to wonder about it, it didn't have to wait to desire about it, it didn't have to do any of that stuff, but it still in fact did wait for an eternity to decide to poof human beings. Again, we cannot just assume that the same mechanics that work within space-time are also necessarily beyond space-time. Why should that be so? Well, just for the very reason you're obliging me to explain the first cause, I'm going to oblige you to explain the first cause of God's inspiration. And if you're going to say, well, God was asleep forever, then I'm going to say the universe was asleep forever. Whatever answer you have for what God was doing the day before creation, I'll just say that's what the universe was doing forever and ever before the Big Bang. So whatever your excuse is for why God waited an eternity to create the earth, I'm just going to use that excuse to explain what happens before the Big Bang. How about that? Is that a fair deal? Okay. No problem then. And again, I simply throw the question back at you. Through what process of evolution did that thing which preceded the Big Bang go through in order to cause the Big Bang? I don't know. Like I said, I can't tell you the gear works of the fundament. Alright, now I could speculate, and that's all I can do. I can just say that the universe is made out of empty space, everything. Maybe it is something, and it's this thing called a quanta, and it's a little square, and all the little squares are just everything is full of square next to square next to square next to square. And there just happens that every bazillion squares, has to be an adjustment for leap year or something, but whatever happens, but there's a stress and the square breaks, it cracks, it pops, it snaps. And when it snaps, it leaves a void, and then the other squares try to fill the void, and then they try to fill that void, and they try to fill that void, and that creates this pressure thing and this stretchy thing. And the whole universe stretches, and then when it stretches far enough, the band breaks, and the Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall. That's one explanation, but I mean, you can come up with a million of them, but they're all going to be pretty mechanical, I think. Yeah, I think they are. I think they're going to be mechanical explanations of failure. I guess that's all, folks. Okay. God, I just hate these people. Just hate them. Just hate them. And you read these comments and you're just so discouraged. Like, oh, there's just no place to go here. These people are all out of their frickin' minds. And it's just so depressing. And this is a good answer on the Modern Mystics video. So let's see, where is it here? Okay. If life isn't fun, you're doing it wrong. And you always have the option to check out early. So why not have babies? Joe Smo. Well, how much you want to bet this isn't a person? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, he's got something on here. What the hell he's got here? He subscribed to a channel. Oh, no doubt he's a sports fan. Yes. And a Republican, no doubt about it. Okay, we got that. Let's see. He subscribed to his own channel. Interesting. Yeah, these are, look, they're the more, I don't know what that is. All Nations Party. That's interesting. Cyber Report. Larkin Rose. I don't know what that is. This guy looks like a nut. So I subscribe to Rape of Justice. The Rape of Justice. I don't know who's on that cover, but it looks like a scary guy. Some kind of British thing. Oh, it's Australian. The Australian Realist. Oh, he's probably some kind of right-wing nut. This channel is firstly dedicated to the study of human psychology, human biodiversity, and the potential political, social ramifications of these facts. I don't know what that means. Sounds like a pile of crap. Dawson. Yeah, that's whatever. Let's see. Libertarian Realist. Oh, dear. Trying to survive. I don't know. Pravda. Race. Okay. Stephen Molly Q. There you go. Crazy fuckwit. Alright, anyway. But I mean, really, did the 50 million people who died in World War II, did they do life wrong because they didn't have a good time? I mean, you just, I keep saying this line. I just say it one more time just for the fun of it, right? But I hope you get exactly what this rhetoric has earned you. I mean, you just can't get it. Enough pianos just can't fall on you. So, I mean, I don't wish, I'm just saying, if harm has to happen, if somebody's sister has to die, it ought to be yours, that's for sure. If life isn't fun, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, so obviously those people born in Indonesia, if you were born in Indonesia, you did it wrong. You got born wrong. Really are. You're just such a crazy fuck to come up with this kind of whatever this is. That's not even rainbow talk. That's leprechaun gold and Pokemon porridge. Well, I guess Teletubbies eat porridge, but same difference. Wow. Count for nothing. This is so depressing. I'm sorry, I was going to deciding whether something should get through my firewall. Probably some Joe Smo attack. Anyway. God, so depressing. Even this hover blubber guy said something stupid here. My answer would be no, I can't, but would feel obliged to hog the mic long enough to add, but I can't justify not having them either. I can't figure out that it'd be really cruel to sit there and create some kid that might hate its existence and want to fucking, whap me repeatedly upside the fucking head. I mean, what a stupid thing to say. I can't justify not having them either. Yeah, there's a problem in the world. Yeah, don't solve the problem. Make more of the problem. Yeah, that's the solution. Fuck you.